Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
The fire one witness calls the beast will not be tamed by man. Only rain can save Fort McMurray, Alberta now. Wildfire has exploded through parched forests, forcing this week the largest mass evacuation in North America in decades. At least 90,000 people are on the run, living in emergency shelters, and most have no idea what has happened to their homes. At least 1,600 houses are gone. One man who drove his family through the flames said simply, "I thought we were dead."
The flames once again lit up the night, appearing to dance on the shores of a nearby lake. The blaze has been driven by wicked winds, pushing and pulling the heat in all directions.
Late last night, this fire proved just how unpredictable it can be, heading south and north, devouring everything in its path, crossing this road, and is burning up this forest.
Today, the fire continued to grow, huge plumes of smoke and flames shooting up into the sky. Time-lapse video shows how intense this fire can get in just 1 hour. Chad Morrison is Alberta's wildfire manager.
This fire is a fuel-driven fire, which is a result of very dry drought conditions over a long period of time. We have not seen rain in this area for the last 2 months.
It feels surreal. It feels like we're in a movie right now. A nightmare we can't wake up from.
Thousands of evacuees are now being flown to safety. Today, a convoy of 500 vehicles brought some evacuees south. Passing through the town most of them call home. Much of it is simply burned to the ground.
Syria's military denies any involvement in airstrikes on a camp for displaced people near the Syrian-Turkish border, in which at least 30 people were killed. The state media, Sana'a news agency, quoted the military as accusing rebels of targeting the civilians. Meanwhile, rebels have seized the village of Khan Tuman from the government forces in the southwest of the city of Aleppo. The attack was reportedly launched by an alliance of Islamic insurgents, including the al-Qaeda-linked group the Al-Nusra Front. Clashes between the jihadist militants and the Syrian government forces have left at least 73 people dead.
A wave of small earthquakes shaking Mount St. Helens in recent days, and experts say more than 100 quakes have actually occurred underneath the Washington State volcano over the last several weeks.
About 35 people are trapped at a construction site after a landslide buried a dormitory in Taining County, Sanming City of southeast China's Fujian province.
After days on end of heavy rain, devastation came to the mountainous county of Taining. It was about 5 a.m. in the morning. 100,000 cubic meters of mud and rocks came hurtling down, burying the living quarters at a power plant construction site. Most workers were sound asleep. There was no warning, he says. I was sleeping. Suddenly, all came down. I climbed my way out. There was a crack less than a meter wide, and I crawled out little by little, he says. My head wasn't clear when I saw the house from afar being pushed towards us, he says. But in my heart, I knew. I suddenly started climbing up the mountain, he says. What used to be a road, now covered with huge boulders.
Protesters held banners bearing messages of peace, as well as mock versions of the separation barrier that Israeli authorities are building between Israel and the West Bank. The ongoing conflict in the region is a serious problem, as the wave of violence has seen near daily attacks by Palestinians who have killed 28 Israelis and 2 Americans.
Human Rights Watch says Saudi Arabia has used US-made cluster munitions in its war against Yemen, despite evidence of mounting civilian casualties. The rights group called on the US to stop producing and selling the internationally banned weapons in compliance with international law. Human Rights Watch also said the US has endangered many civilian lives by selling the cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia. The weapons have been banned in 119 countries since 2008 due to the threat they pose to civilians during wars. Riyadh invaded Yemen over a year ago. More than 9,400 people have so far lost their lives in the Saudi onslaught.
This past week, parts of Oklahoma were rattled by more earthquakes. Last year, the state averaged more than 2 earthquakes a day with a magnitude of 3 or higher. Before 2009, Oklahoma averaged 2 quakes per year.
Well, Al-Qaeda's leader is urging jihadist fighters in Syria to unite or die. Osama bin Laden's successor, Ayman al-Zawahiri, released a new recording yesterday. He called for unity among jihadists and rebels, but he also criticized ISIS for being, and I do quote, extremists and renegades, end quote. In his speech, he said, and I quote, "We have to want the unity of Syria so it will be liberated from the Russians and Western crusaders. My brothers, the matter of unity is a matter of life or death for you," end quote.
Look at that picture. Listen to that wind. 5 people were injured. Roads closed. Dozens of power poles yanked down by powerful tornadoes in Colorado, and one of the twisters was a half-mile wide. It left a trail of damage 6 miles long. And you look at the image here, it's amazing more people weren't injured, fortunately, because this was eastern Colorado. It's very rural there, not a lot of homes, but authorities are still trying to survey some of the aftermath. They do know several homes and at least one business were damaged.
That's the most violent motion oh my God.
This is the twister that decimated Garvin County, Oklahoma Monday.
Oh no, there's the lines.
Violent high-speed winds ripped away everything in their path, including trees and electric poles. Forecasters declared a tornado emergency for communities in the track of the fast-moving tornado. A 76-year-old man was killed. Family members say he was on the phone with them when the storm hit.
He said he could see trees are coming up in his yard down through here. And then his friend said every little bit of the phone just went dead.
Lisa Buckner lives next door.
Ran back to the cellar, locked down, and started praying.
Her house was one of several torn to pieces.
And I walked out and I seen everything, you know, I think I kind of went into shock a little bit.
In nearby Johnston County, another man was killed after a tornado snapped trees and damaged buildings. County Commissioner Roy Belvins called on a friend to help him search for the victim.
And when he got there, he said he thought he was still alive, but it was bad.
Tornadoes weren't the only threat. Along this highway in North Texas, we've seen everything from heavy downpours leading to flash flooding, and what you can hear there, that's hail.
In Lincoln, Nebraska, hail and heavy rainfall pummeled entire neighborhoods, while flash flooding stranded drivers. Severe thunderstorms rumbled across Little Rock, Arkansas. As the storm moved east and further north, high winds damaged an airport.
The system that caused this destruction now moves east, with severe thunderstorms in the forecast for the central and southern plains. And parts of the Mississippi Valley could see heavy rains and possible flooding.
Experts from the Weather Bureau say the number of rainy days has not increased compared to previous years, but the amount of rainfall has been larger, in some places up to 80% more than the average. And experts say that in 1987 and 1998, there were super floods after similar heavy rainfalls. And this year's heavy rain may be influenced by a strong El Nino phenomenon.
Today, a political crisis has much of Baghdad in lockdown. Thousands of security forces were deployed to prevent a repeat of last week when protesters broke into the so-called Green Zone, which houses Iraqi government offices, foreign embassies, and the United States Embassy.
And here's why. Last weekend, thousands of protesters stormed the Green Zone and overran Parliament, accusing the government of corruption. It looked like an uprising. They were acting largely on the orders of Muqtada al-Sadr, the powerful Shiite cleric whose militias fought raging street battles against U.S. soldiers at the height of the insurgency in 2004. Today, the massive security cordon meant his supporters were confined to Sadr City, the sprawling Shia neighborhood on the edge of Baghdad. It hasn't changed much in the years since the war has ended. Do you? We met Saeed Al-Batad, who told us why he took part in the Green Zone protest. They don't care about us, he said. Look at the poor, the hungry. There's no electricity, no drinkable water, and no jobs. How shameful is that? We asked Muqtada al-Sadr's deputy, Hakim al-Zamali, about Sadr's strategy.
Is there a danger of destabilizing this government at a time when this country is at war with ISIS?
For 13 years, all we've gotten are bombings, corruption, very little security, a weak economy, and ISIS, he said. We've run out of time. We cannot wait any longer.
It's been a busy year so far in the DPRK, with a fourth nuclear bomb test, the launch of a satellite on a rocket capable of doubling as a long-range missile, multiple shorter-range missile tests, including from a submarine, and claims of miniaturizing a nuclear bomb to fit in a warhead.
After Kim Jong-un came to power, their nuclear capacity has rapidly advanced and switched from developing an atomic bomb to a hydrogen bomb.
They got the results from the first 3 tests. From the 4th test, the focus is how increase the power and make a strategic weapon.
Smaller and more powerful nuclear weapons are being developed in tandem with the DPRK's accelerated missile program. The DPRK's stated aim is to miniaturize a nuclear device small enough that it can fit on the head of an intercontinental ballistic missile, with a range capable of reaching as far afield as the United States. Some advisors to the South Korean government believe the DPRK already has medium-range nuclear-capable missiles.
The DPRK has no problem to miniaturize the bomb for the Nordon missile, but the ICBM has to endure greater degree of heat, and they don't have the sort of technology to reach that level yet.
South Korea is considering deploying a controversial US anti-missile system, though some still hope talks with Pyongyang could be restarted.
To make them stop an advanced nuclear missile, America and the DPRK need to reach a settlement. If they stop the test, the US and South Korea must reduce the United Nations training, and the DPRK will need to freeze operations at its Pyongyang nuclear facility.
Tough sanctions introduced by the UN Security Council aim to slow the development of an effective long-range nuclear weapon. But many experts say without renewed diplomatic efforts, that program can only be slowed, not brought to an end.